Hey, hello everyone. Welcome to Coding Adda. So today we'll go with the topic Docker. So before actually jumping onto Docker, let's go and discuss about the era before Docker, right? So I'm pretty sure you must have heard about this thing from the dev, right? This particular thing is working on my machine. I don't know why it is not working on the test environment and why it is not working on the production. I don't know, and this is perfectly working fine on my system, right? So this we have heard many times. And let's take an example. If you have an application, right, and you want to deploy that application to suppose on the test environment. So before Docker, what we actually do, I mean, typically we configure a server, right? So let's suppose our application is using a node and a particular version. We need to install that version. Then we need to we need to do some configurations, might be some environment variables and all, right? And then you finally deploy your code and then you just run it and you see if your application is working fine or not, right? And tomorrow, let's suppose a requirement came, you need to set up this I mean, you need to run your application on some different server. Then what will happen? You need to do the same steps again, right? So that is I mean, pre DevOps, I mean, pre Docker era, right? So uh, that usually happen, right? So what Docker is, so Docker is basically a platform that helps you to building, running and shipping your application, right? So using a Docker you can actually put all your application code and the dependencies into a single package that can be run on any environment, right? So if if a Docker is installed on a server, then you can easily run these images, right? So you basically create a container that, I mean, with your application code and their dependencies, right? So this is actually a Docker, right? Let's move ahead. These are some of the reasons why, I mean, earlier pre Dockerized thing, pre Docker era. I mean, these are the reason. Like there could be some files are missing, there could be the version mismatch, there could be some configuration issue due to which devs are saying like it's working fine on my machine. Might be the issue on the issue could be related to the server related or could be the version of the, I mean, the dependencies mismatch, right? So if you see here, what Docker provide is it's an basically container, right? So if you see these are the three containers that are running on a kernel, right? A kernel means there is an within an OS, kernel is a manager, right? That actually manage the task. So here, if you see, these are the different type of container. In this particular container, PHP and MySQL and Ubuntu is there, right? So PHP and MySQL, you know, PHP is in programming language and MySQL is in a database. So we just ship all these three together and this become a container, right? And here Java, Tomcat server, and the Debian. This is an OS, right? So this is a kind of a container, high level image, right, of the container. So what all are the benefits of using Dockers? So one of the benefit is can work without worry to set up dependencies, correct? Because when you just shipped everything into a single package, then you just need to run that thing, right? And the other one is, if let's suppose a new dev joins your team, right? Then she don't need to spend much time to set up the machine, right? Earlier, what used to happen whenever a new member joins your team, he has to spend whole day set up his or her machine, right? You need to, if let's suppose you that particular project or an application is in maybe you can say a node or it requires a MySQL, then he has to first install the Node.js, then he has to set up the MySQL, then he has to set up the code. I mean, a lot of things he has to do to run a single, I mean, that particular application. And taking scenario, if you your application is in microservice based, so there are a lot of services, and the dev has to set up, the new team member has to set up all and each and all services. Maybe one service is in the Python, one is in the Node.js, one is in the maybe in the .NET Core, or maybe in other technologies. So he has to properly set up a system before actually jump onto the development, right? So these are the benefits. I mean, in Docker, you just do Docker compose and up, Docker compose up, and your all the dependencies, whatever is there in that application, it would work seamlessly, right? And dev not has not to spend too much time onto this, right? So one more benefit, let's suppose uh, one of your application is needed a node 9 version. I mean, it's a legacy application, and the other one that you have newly created is on node 14, right? So eventually what will happen if you, I mean, if you talk about the normal pre Docker era, I mean, in your one VM or a one server, you can install only one type of dependency. I mean, you can't be able to install two different type of node versions, right? But what Docker provide you, it's an it is a container, right? So all the dependencies there inside that particular image, right? So whenever you run that particular container image, it's an isolated environment, right? This runs in their own, I mean, it's completely different app, and this one is completely different app. So now the one of the most benefit you will get, you can run these two containers on a single VM, right? On a single machine, and with different dependencies, right? Node 14 and Node 9 can be run on a same machine, right? Which you can't be able to do on a normal VM, right? So this is the benefit of how you can utilize, I mean, these are the actual benefit of the containers, right? And now uh, one question came to your mind, like what is the difference between a VM and a container, right? This looks like a similar, right? I mean, even though if we can't run two different dependencies like a node 9 and node 14 on a same machine, but still we can, what we can do, we can have two different VMs, and then we can run a different application on the different VMs, right? But usually what actually VM is. I mean, VM actually works using a hypervisor, right? So it's in virtualization. So let's suppose you have a system. To run a VM, you need to install, I mean, you need to run this hypervisor, and hypervisor can be a VMware or a virtual box, right? And if you're familiar with the VM, you need to install a OS on that VM, right? So this is the guest OS, and these are some of the application libraries, and this is the app one, right? Similar, if you want to run a different app, you need to set up a different VM. If these two having a different dependencies, I mean different versions, this is it. But here the actual problem is, as we need, this is an I mean, your machine, there could be some underlying OS of that particular machine. On top of that, you are installing your guest OS, right? So whenever this machine gets start, it needs to load the entire OS, right? Which would take a time. That is why a VM, when you run a VM, it would actually taking a time, because of entire OS needs to be loaded, right? Whereas if we talk about the containers, so these are the underlying infrastructure. I mean, your machine, right? On top of that, it's an operating system, whatever installed on that particular machine. And then there is a Docker engine, that is a uh, Docker application that needs to be installed. On top of that, these are the different containers that are running. So here, if you see this, we don't need this guest OS, right? Because containers use the machine operating system itself on which the Docker engine is installed. So here, app1 is actually using the machine kernel itself, I mean the machine operating system itself, to run this particular application, right? So here if you see, as this guest OS got removed, that means it would run faster as compared to the VM. And also in the VM, it consume more memory as well as processor, because every VM you have to give the RAM and the processor, right? But here, as you don't need to do to I mean install an OS, and this should run much faster as compared to the VM, right? So on a single, let's say an example, on a single VM, you can might be this would be the case, like this is a VM, right? On a single VM, we can add a multiple application, right? So that is a benefit of this Docker, right? So let's quickly jump to a demo, right? So let's go ahead. So these, so let me, I mean, if you want to install Docker, you can go and check out the links. I mean, so if you go Docker, on the Docker website, you can go and install Docker. So this is a link. I will provide that in the video description, right? So once you install, you will find that you can run Docker-v, you will find the version, Docker version that is installed, right? So Docker, if you run Docker ps, this is a command to actually see if any container is running on my machine. And then let's suppose we want to run some basic, I mean container, right? So let's do this. So let's run the CentOS, okay? So Docker run the, so let's suppose this is an image name, and you are wondering, I mean, how I got this image name, because these are the official name, right? Docker CentOS. If you go, you will find this, right? So here, if you go, you will find the name of the image, right? Let, let me just show you. These are the public images, correct? So CentOS. So what I did here is I'm saying Docker to run this particular image, right? So if I run this, see what will, okay, in Windows you need to apply this WinPy, then the Docker run IT CentOS. On Linux you don't need to apply this WinPy, right? So see, unable to find image on the local, but what will happen, it will fetch image from the public repository, that is the Docker hub is an, this is, if you see, this is a Docker hub is an uh, where you can store all your uh, Docker images, right? It's an hub where we store all the images. It could be public or it could be private, right? So right, so now we have the image, right? So image is there, correct? So if you see Docker PS. Okay. Oh, I'm inside this. I'm actually inside this image, right? So let me go back and come here. If you see, this is running. And this is actually I just executed and then I exit. It's not running. Let me do this. Docker run IT fmd T, and then let me run this, right? Now what I'm trying to say, run this particular CentOS image, and then it's in detached mode, my means in the background, and -p, I'm telling that run this on the port 80. This is the internal port of the image, and this is the outermost port, right? So let me run this, okay? So, so if you see now, this is running, right? So this is running. If I now go here and if I run this local host, then you will see empty response, right? Because nothing is running on port 80 actually, right? So let's run something. Let's run HTTPD on this port, right? So let's first we need to go into this container. This is a container ID. If I control insert this, and if you run bash, you will actually going to enter this, right? So here, this is a command to actually log in into your container, right? So now I'm inside the container. So see, here it. So if you see, these are the directories inside, right? So yum install yum update. Let's do yum update first. Then we'll install the HTTPD. Okay. So this sometimes this happens. You need to add some repositories link, right? So if you run this, and then if you run this, we are just adding the yum. We are just enabling the yum and providing some of the like, repository URLs where to fetch the data. Yum update. Now it should update, correct? So it is working fine now, right? So it is working. Okay. It should not take much time. So here what we did actually, we pulled and sent to us image and we just executed, right? And now inside that image, we're going to run HTTPD on the port 80 so that our app should get a request, right? I mean, because earlier you see like that was not working, right? So yum install HTTPD. I mean, HTTPD by default run on the port 80, right? So let's run this. User has been, so it's now running, correct? So let's go and refresh this page. See, this is the server test page is coming, right? And it now let's do one thing inside this. But this is the default HTTP directory, right? So if I go here and just do index.html, let's just change the content. This is serving from inside the Docker. Okay, let's just do this and just refresh the page. See now what should happen. Ideally, this content should get changed. Right? See, this is the beauty of Docker, right? I mean, you don't you this is how you change something inside the Docker and it would be getting reflected, right? So let me exit from this. So here this is running, right? Docker. So let's do some more things on this. Okay. So let's do one thing. Uh, so if you see here, I'm a simple. Let's suppose you are a node developer, right? So you want to I mean, this is just a sample node application. Let's create a image out of this app and just try to run this on some different server, right? So let me just talk about some about this Docker file. Docker file is actually used to generate the image, right? So what we are saying here is from uh, mm, this is actually the because you need a node image, right? The node image, the base image, right? So what I did is from node alpine, right? It's an alpine means a very small image for the node. You even though you can write it like something like this, you can remove this alpine. It should also work, right? This is an official node image that we are going to use. If you go here and see node docker, you will find this, right? This is an official node image, right? So as you know, you need to run a node application, so you need a node official image, right? And now what I am doing, I'm actually copying the app.js file where I just written the console statement to the app folder inside this, right? And now I'm saying I want to run this node app.js, right? So I'm running this command. Work dir is actually I'm moving this. I'm telling that this Docker image to move inside this slash app folder, right? So this is there. So this is the actual file, right? Docker file. So if you want to build a Docker image, like what should be the command? Docker build hyphen t and any name, demo node or the node, right? And dot is the where is the actual Docker file. If let's suppose the Docker file is inside this folder, you can mention like this, but our Docker file is inside the Docker demo folder. That is why I'm giving the dot. If you do this, ideally see like what would happen. It would eventually run and the images getting created. So if you go and see the images, you will find this demo code node, that is this image got generated, right? Correct. So this is the image got generated. So now let's run this. What is the image name? Images. Let copy this name. Docker run it. So this is the command to actually run. So let run. Okay. I forgot. I'm on the Windows. Okay. Finally, see from Node.js app inside Docker. So this is a content coming because in the app.js this is written, right? This. If I okay, okay, okay. So this so now let's do one thing. Let's push this image onto Docker Hub, right? This is what we need to learn, right? So Docker, first of all, you need to log in. So you need to do NPTY, okay, and the password. So first you need to log in, and then what you need to do, you need to tag your images. Tag demo code ada hyphen note as an unshoe 91. This is actually your hub username, right? Docker hub username. Hyphen note. So I'm just tagging this image, this, and now what I need to do, Docker push Q91 demo code, push the latest image, right? And we should get this image onto this Docker hub. Let me go the here. You will find these are some of the earlier images that I created 17 days, 6 months ago. So it should be pushing this image. It would not take much time. So see the image is successfully deployed, pushed onto Docker Hub, right? See the image is here. Let me just go. So this is the actual, I mean the name of our image, right? The tag name is the latest tag, right? Because we haven't provided. We can provide the v1, v2, right? So let's run this image onto. So there is a playground provided by the Docker, right? But to provide you a machine, right? So once you log in using Docker, if you go here and just start it, they'll provide. You need to add a new instance. They'll provide you some dummy instance, right? So let's alt and enter onto this, correct? So this is a machine they provided, right? If I run there, we don't have a node, right? But we want to run that image, right? So we should be needing a Docker should be installed. So Docker is already installed. So what we need to do? Docker run an ID and simple the name I copied, right? So it would eventually fetch this image from the Docker hub and run that image on this machine. See, actually fetching that image and it is running. So you will got to get you will see this content from Node.js app inside Docker if on that server as well. See, so how simple is this, right? You just created an image, you push this to the Docker hub, and you can run it anywhere, right? Correct. So how simple is this, right? So if you like this, then just like the video and just give your comments. If you have any queries, you just add into comments and share it with your friends. Thank you, guys.